Alright, y'all, I'm back again. That's my bad. I know towards the end I kind of got rushed there, especially when we started getting into like Uranus and stuff like that. So, yeah, it kind of just threw me off and stuff like that. So I apologize for that. But yeah, this is part two, and yeah, I'm pretty much just gonna go over everything real quick, and then I'm gonna talk about some more things and stuff like that. So yeah, back to the sun. This will just be real brief with this one. With the sun, for example, say you have it in the third house. This is pretty much like what you're here to build and see upon, like build awareness in. So like I said, this can be with the third house. For example, it's, building upon your social and intellectual skills, social and intellectual learning, all forms of communication. And another thing is like environmental awareness. Dealing with the moon, the example I used was the 12th house. So this is really what you're here to manifest in this life. So this can be all forms of type of spiritual knowledge, turning that into wisdom, subconscious endeavors, all things dealing with the subconscious. Studying your subconscious can have a lot to do with like dreams and stuff like that. You may be big with like having certain psychic abilities, or really building your spiritual abilities, in terms of like maybe clairvoyance, clairaudience, magic, all type of different things dealing with spirituality, because spirituality covers so many different aspects. So I feel like it's just really going deep with spirituality and learning about all these different types of things about spirituality, which is something I love about, spirituality, because, a lot of people, will be stuck in like certain religions, and it's like they're only stuck in that one thing, and it's like that's the only thing they learn about, and that's what their perception is based upon. So that's why I love spirituality. It's so like open-minded, and that's how it's supposed to be, and it's like I don't really let anything box me in too much, so it's like I really like to be very open and free spirit, and just learn about all type of different things and what works for me personally, or what works for you guys. I think that's pretty big with that. This can also deal with like healing of yourself and healing others. It can deal with suffering and pain, limitations, maybe being stuck in isolation, your own mental prison and stuff like that. It can deal with enemies and, and stuff like that as well. One-on-one charity, like I said, that has to do with maybe healing others and any type of one-on-one charity. Going to Mars, this is like what you're really here to get passionate about and really get involved in. Like if you run from what house this is in, it can really be detrimental to your growth and in this life, and it can really your life will really reflect that to you. The example I used here was the second house, and this is like really getting involved in your values, resources, possessions. Could be even money, finances. This is a big thing that this deals with. But just in general, what is like what does value mean to you? Like what do you value? What is resources to you? What are possessions? What does that all this mean to you? Like how are you gonna really get involved in making money? Because that's money is important here, and money is just energy. So yeah, that's important to learn too. And yeah, Mercury. This is what you're here to think about or think through, or it could also be something that you had too much on your mind in the past life. In your past life, and the example I used here was the fourth house. So maybe you had a lot of fourth house things on your mind in the past life, or it can mean like this is what you're really here to think about or think through and get over that hump. And this fourth house deals with roots, vibes. The moon is the moon is in this house. That's the fourth house rules over the moon. So it could really deal with like emotions, the mother, or just like that mother energy, caring for others or caring for yourself, in a really emotional way and stuff like that. Really getting emotions involved and, stuff like that. And dealing with Venus, this is what you're here to love and appreciate, because maybe you weren't loving and appreciating in your past life. An example I used here was the fifth house. So maybe you're here to learn or love and appreciate pleasure, entertainment. It could even mean procreation. Examples I used, art of all forms, or whatever type of art you're into. Art can be in many different things. It doesn't even have to be like like writing or drawing and stuff like that. It could be like maybe you like to express yourself through dancing, or Maybe you play sports, and that's maybe how you really like to express yourself, and that's a form of art in itself. Maybe the way you play or however you do what you do. It could deal with culture here, romance, um, risk taking in life, and financially, and just really being, like maybe you need to be like on, not be afraid to be on center stage and stuff like that, and to be, the star of the show or whatever, or just to take the initiation in that, like not to be afraid of that energy, like to really embrace that. Moving to Jupiter, this is like what you're here to really expand on, learn, and really experience, like because Jupiter really deals with experiences, and this can be like, a lot of people like to use, sex as an example with the eighth house. And like I said, this doesn't always have to be with physical sex. It can deal with like sex with life, and going deep with life and stuff like that. Deep relationships, really learning from others. Doesn't eighth house can deal with manipulation, but you really have to be keen on that, to not really go too deep with that, and to not manipulate others. And maybe you do have to manipulate some things, because like maybe a lot of people are after you, or some people are trying to manipulate you, so you gotta use that energy on them before they get to you and stuff like that, or whatever. It can also deal with shared resources, occult things, mysticism, really going deep with your spiritual endeavors, like really going deep with magic, like really practicing these things, really like applying, like just really getting serious about these things, because eighth house can have some of those Mars vibes as well. So it's like really going deep and being passionate about these things and really getting serious with it. It can really mean like it can deal with like rebirth as well. So yeah, really expanding on what things you do need to transform from, and experiences that are really going to transform you in general. Moving to Saturn, this is like what you're really here to take responsibility for. So I use the first house as an example. So you're really here to take responsibility for yourself, personality, even personal responsibilities, maybe even your physical body, physical appearance, the way you see yourself, how you come off to others, your self potential. It can really just big on like the power of your overall self image. That's really what you're here to take responsibility for. Not putting that on anybody else. Really owning up to everything that you need to own up to, and being the person that you can be, and just really owning up to all of that. So yeah, moving to Uranus, this can deal with like individuality and uniqueness. And the example I used was the 11th house. So, and just whatever house it's in, like this is probably where it's going to be like best for you, to use your individuality and uniqueness and incorporate it into that house, kind of merging the two. So with the 11th house, with friends, networking, groups, organizations, your goals, destiny, and yeah, just really big on knowing yourself from others while you're in these environments, are the examples that I use there. Moving to Neptune, this is like, dreams, illusions, creativity, and fantasy. So with the illusions, and like, I think you have to watch out for whatever house that it's in, to not have illusions in these houses. Like with the 11th house, not to be swayed by certain associates, or, because you can be caught up in illusions with these people, like, man, these people aren't my friends, and you might see it, come to play later on, like, yeah, these people were never really my friends, and you were just caught up in illusions. On the good side, it can be like, you can deal with like dreams, creativity, and fantasy, so like when you incorporate yourself in certain things, like you can really be someone that's super creative, and really benefit from these things, if you really merge those two. And like I said, you just merge whatever house that it's in with that energy, with the Neptunian energy, really going higher with your spiritual endeavors, like and stuff like that. Like I said, with Pluto, this is like what you're here to really transform and have a rebirth in, maybe put death to, and we all know that death is only transformation. And the example I used here was like the 9th house, and this is like, maybe putting death to, like I said, the example I used was like, if you are religious, you maybe have to put death to that, and now you're somebody that's super spiritual, going super deep with that. Also, maybe just like, your moral systems, your truth, dealing with philosophy and theories and higher understanding of things, higher forms of education, maybe putting death to certain things that just really weren't working for you, and finding new ways to things that do work for you. And then also what I wanted to cover was like the opposites. I feel like the opposites are pretty big, like for whatever house that it is in. Like I said, for the sun in the third, it's like maybe you were too caught up on like going way too deep into things and putting meaning and reasonings to everything and going too right brain with that. And then it's like, maybe you have to learn like, maybe some things don't have meanings and reasonings behind them. And you do have to incorporate that left brain sometimes. With the moon in the 12th, the opposite is like the sixth house. So maybe you were manifesting a lot of like sixth house things, like or my bad. Or yeah, no, I'm right. Yeah, the 12th house and the sixth house, that's the opposite. So like, yeah, maybe you were just manifesting a lot of like things dealing with health and routine and patterns and stuff like that. And maybe you were scared to take a leap of faith sometimes, or maybe you weren't so like spiritual. So maybe these are things that you have to learn in this life. With the Mars in the second, the opposite is the eighth house. So here, maybe you were too caught up on like other people's resources, getting manipulated by others, not really knowing what your values and resources were, like personally to you, like what those things meant to you. So you're here to really focus on what these things mean to you and build your own values and resources. With Mercury, with the fourth house, the opposite there is the 10th house. So maybe you were too caught up on like not using emotions and not really building emotional connection with people, or from a intellectual standpoint, dealing with Mercury, like maybe that a lot of that wasn't on your mind. You were just like, you know, just big on like getting your business done and just focused on yourself and stuff like that. So maybe you have to incorporate a lot of that fourth house energy here. With Venus dealing with the fifth house, the opposite there is the 11th house. So maybe you were just really loving and appreciating playing the back role, maybe just being the observer of things, maybe scared to be on center stage and not really appreciating, a lot of different things dealing with, like I said, entertainment, like what is entertainment to you as opposed to like being in group entertainment, and stuff like that. What is pleasure to you? Yeah, dealing with Jupiter, the example I used was the eighth house. The opposite of the eighth house is the second house. So maybe you were really expanding and had a lot of experiences dealing with, second house energy, which is like, values, resources, possessions, and stuff like that. And maybe it was just in the wrong way. So maybe you're here to really just go deep with this, and have yeah, just really go deep with this, like maybe you weren't too focused on like, like magic and occult and mysticism and stuff like that. Or maybe you were just like real surface level with a lot of things, and maybe you're just really here to expand on going deep with things, learning the opposite of that energy, like dealing with Saturn. The example I used here was the first house, and the opposite is the seventh house. So maybe you were just too caught up on like relationships and not being yourself and not knowing how to be yourself, too caught up on getting others' approval or compromising, and you're just really here to learn about how to own up all of this to yourself, like how to be yourself, how to love yourself, taking power of your own self-image by yourself, not needing others to feel loved and stuff like that. And then yeah, like I said, going to Pluto, this could be like, the example I used was the ninth house, so the opposite would be like the third house. So yeah, maybe you were just had a lot of power over the third house, and things like that. So once again, maybe you were just like being real, you were seeking knowledge all the time, but maybe you just weren't going too deep with these things, or maybe you were afraid to take a leap of faith sometimes. Like I said, the example I used was religion, and that to me can be real surface level about a lot of different things. I feel like they don't go too deep into things, or they're scared to go deep into things, or find the real meanings and reasonings behind these things, or just get to the root of things, or speaking their truth and stuff like that. Like I said, just really going to the next level with it. Like, yeah, we might have mastered that, but now what's next? Or like not being afraid to take things to the next level. Just being really open-minded and stuff like that. And then with Uranus, like I said, the example I used was the 11th house. The opposite is the 5th house. So maybe this deals with like individuality and uniqueness. So the opposite would be like the 5th house. So maybe you were just being real, like maybe to yourself a lot, or you were that person that was just like, maybe you were too selfish or always trying to be on center stage and stuff like that. So maybe you need to learn how to incorporate, different type of energy, the opposite energy, learning how to network, learning about how to bring others along with you on, this journey, and stuff like that. Dealing with Neptune, the example I used was the 11th house. And this deals with like dreams, illusions, creativity, and fantasy. And the opposite, once again, is the 5th house here. So yeah, maybe here you are really just like, once again, like dealing with like the like being on center stage and stuff like that, or you maybe have had a lot of dreams about like, maybe you were just somebody that was real creative, like when it comes to spirituality and stuff like that, and maybe you were just expressing it like, in a lot of different ways, and maybe you weren't so aware of how you were expressing it and stuff like that. So maybe now, this time around you're here to try to incorporate all of that, with others, and in some type of organizations or even like soul groups, stuff like that is big, like really getting involved in these things, and really putting your trust in others, like in healthy ways, like learning boundaries, like setting boundaries and stuff like that. And then some other things I wanted to talk about was like your earth sign. In simple terms, like your earth sign, it deals with like practicality and like physical things, like things that you physically like to do, or maybe things that you physically don't like to do. And your earth sign is always going to be like the opposite of your sun sign. So for example, if you're like a Gemini sun, the opposite would be Sag. So maybe you physically like to do things that are like dealing with that type of energy, like mutable fire, taking action on things, maybe traveling, and it could even play out in like a lot of creativity and like higher forms of understanding things, like maybe for example, like you really like to express yourself in ways that's like you really do like to travel. Maybe you like dancing and stuff like that. It's one of the ways you like to express yourself. For me, I like to play a lot of sports, I know. So it's like I really like to express myself, in those ways. Like I really like to be real, I really like to just be real different, and, take that as like a form of art in itself, and really that's one of the ways that I really express myself, So that's just an example of that, So it's like maybe you physically don't like to do a lot of that, do a lot of those things dealing with that energy, So that's how it can play out as well. But yeah, your earth sign is going to deal with like things that you physically like to do. It can even do with like physical appearance, or things that you physically don't like to do. So yeah, like I said, whatever whatever sun sign you are, it's going to be the opposite of that, And it doesn't, like I said, it's different, from opposites in like regular astrology, because it's not going to deal with like the opposite. It's not going to deal with like an opposition, Like I said, it's going to deal with like things that you physically like to do or physically don't like to do, Dealing with that energy, whatever sign that it's in for you. And then just like real brief, like dealing with the midheaven. This is like how you want to be seen in society, or what you see yourself doing. So whatever house that's in has a big play on that. For example, if it is in the 9th house, an example here would be like you're going to be somebody that likes to travel. Maybe your career deals with traveling, and you're somebody that's going to be a real visionary, full of life, a positive spirit, real optimistic. Dealing with self-expression. Example can be like you may be somebody that's like dealing with like being a motivational speaker and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the example for that. And then dealing with your north node, whatever house that's in. The example I'm going to use here is again the 9th house. And so it's really going. The North Node deals with like your spiritual journey. Like the thing that you're really here to like go deep with. And it may be something that you fear. Because it's like you may be caught up in your South Node energy. And the South Node for the ninth house would be the third house. So maybe you're real comfortable with that energy. And it's like the ninth house energy, it kind of throws you off and stuff like that, and that's really what you need to expand on. Really, if you want to expand on your spiritual growth in this here incarnation in this life, so yeah, just really going deep with like being passionate about knowledge and turning that into wisdom. Not being afraid to travel, to get out there, to expand beyond your like your close environment, the things that you're comfortable with, like, because you may just be like, for example, you may just be somebody that's like, you live, in the same city your whole life, or maybe even the same state, and it's like, if you just take that leap, and it's like, life was really going to reflect that back to you, like, especially if you really just go deep with it, and you just go all in with it, it's like, that's probably where you're gonna get the most out of life, and you're really gonna benefit, because that's the house that it's in for you, and it's like, whatever house it's in for you, it's like, that's really what's going to be lit for you in your life, like that house is really going to be on fire, so yeah, that was just a quick breakdown of all the planets, and stuff like that, and a few other things. And then like I said, I'm going to try to come back and do like, maybe even cover like the houses and the asteroids, and just the houses itself, and a simple way of looking at all of that. So yeah, I hope this helped you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday. So yeah, peace everybody.